Okay, Be'ez Hashem, tonight's daf is daf Samach Beis. And we were discussing, the Gemara got into a conversation of what the end of the season of picking figs are. And when you know for the fact that you don't have to pick figs anymore, then you're permitted to go into the fig field and start eating the figs for free. So we could just briefly review the top line, the second line of the top. We did this yesterday, but Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the richest person, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, Iklu happened to happen, Lahu Asra, to this city, Bisman Shehukbalu Roif Hamikzu Ois, when they wrapped up all the mats that they used to. Most of the people have mats where they spread the figs out so that they can dry over the summer. The season's over, let's say September time, when everybody's folded up their mats. Most people folded up their mats and they're done with the processing of figs. So therefore, there are still figs in the field. So presumably, the owner left them for free, whoever wants to take it. So Rebbe, to demonstrate, obviously he's not hungry, he doesn't need this, but Rebbe, to demonstrate to his students that this is hefker, havika ochel, he was eating those figs. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda loy ochel. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda was not eating those figs. He was concerned that perhaps the owner did not want to eat did not have the intention to give them away for free. So he put a stringency upon himself and he didn't eat the figs. Actually, Asa Marhain, the owner, came. Amalahu, he said, and he saw them, they're both not eating. So he said, he assumed that Rebbe was also not eating. Why are you rabbis not eating from my figs, the free figs? It's a time, the season's over. Most people folded up their mats, and therefore it's free. Take them. So v'afal pi, even though the Gemara concludes the story, v'afal pi kain, even so, lo ochel Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda did not want to eat the figs because he thought that the guy didn't really mean it. Mishum sanyus milsa hu dekama hadein gavra. He was saying it in a mockery. You rabbis are always looking for something free. Here, take something free. But the owner himself really didn't want to give it for free. And that's why Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, even after hearing from the owner eat, he did not want to eat from those figs. And that's how we told the story with the barber, with the rabbi yesterday. Anyway, that's how we got into that. The Gemara continues a similar story. Rabbi Chama bar Chanina iklahu asra, he came to the city, bisman shehukbalu roiv hamikzu ois. Again, at a season, when the season was closed, most people folded up their mats and they weren't processing figs anymore. So Rab Chama would eat from the figs. It's free. Yoav l'shamay. So he gave it to his attendant, loy achal, and he didn't want to eat. So he had a very frum attendant, so to speak. And this guy didn't want to eat. Amalahu. So it's not supposed to be fafrumt in front of your own rabbi. Amalei echol. I say eat. Kach amali Rab Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi mishum aviv. Rabbi Shmuel bar Yossi said in the name of his father, Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi had a son, Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel is quoting his father that hukbalu roif hamuktuais. If most people folded up their sheets, their mats, and they're not processing figs anymore, mutares mishum gazel. You are allowed to take them. There's no problem of stealing. Upatures min amasa, and you're potter from Meiser, because like anything is exempt from the taxes, the 10% to Levi, if you obtained it from Hefker. From free stuff, it's potter from Trumas and Meisers. Now, the Gemara is going to tell us a very famous story. Rabbi Tarfon ashkechei lahu gavra. Rabbi Tarfon found this person. Rabbi Tarfon went into a field and started eating the figs. Ashkechei lahu gavra, the owner, found Rabbi Tarfon eating his figs. At a time when presumably Rabbi Tarfon was permitted to eat the figs. So all the people folded up their mats. So Rabbi Tarfon was not doing anything wrong. He was just eating free figs. But the owner came back. And he was eating the ka'achel. So what the owner did, he took Rabbi Tarfon and put him in a bag. He like put him in a bag like you would, and wrapped the bag. Ushkole, and he took him and probably kidnapped him. Va'amtiye l'mishte v'nahara. It's unbelievable. It's like the Queen's Mafia. He wanted to take Rab Tarfon, who's now in his bag, and throw him into the river and drown him because he thought he's stealing his figs. So Rab Tarfon said out loud, Oy loy l'Tarfon. I feel so bad for this guy Tarfon, Shazah Hargay, that this guy is killing him. In a sense, I'm not sure why he should have said, don't kill me. My name is Rabbi Tarfon. I'm the famous Rabbi Tarfon, the great rabbi. But he didn't say that. He said, oh, well, how bad it is for Tarfon that he's being killed by this person. So Shama hu gavre. So this person heard him. Shvake va'arak. He heard his voice and he recognized Rab Tarfon by his voice and va'arak, and he dropped him and let him go. So Omer Rababo Mershim Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel. Rababo said in the name of Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, Kol Yomov Shel Oisei Tzadik. All the life of that tzaddik, of Rabbi Tarfon, Hoye Mitzdayer al Dovar Zeh. He was upset about this thing. Now, what did Rabbi Tarfon do wrong? He was stressed out about it. Well, Rabbi Tarfon introduced himself that I am the great Rabbi Tarfon, and I'm the great rabbi. You're trying to kill me. And so Rabbi Tarfon felt so bad that he introduced himself as a great rabbi. He said, Omar, Rabbi Tarfon said, Oili, I feel so bad. I use the crown of Torah to save myself. What the Gemara is basically saying is Rabbi Tarfon had another way out of this mess. What was that other way out of this mess? Is Rabbi Tarfon was a wealthy guy. He could have said, listen, I'll give you, I'll pay for the figs. Please let me go. So the fact is, Rabbi Tarfon did not use that. He said, oh, I'm Rabbi Tarfon. Save me because I'm a great rabbi. So he saved his life by introducing himself as a great rabbi. And what's wrong with that? But you're not supposed to use the crown of Torah for any personal benefit. Whoever uses the crown of Torah, let's say you use it for a person uses it for, you demand certain perquisites because you are the great rabbi, right? So then, you demand certain things because, you feel that you have influence over people. The Gemara says that you will suddenly die from the world. You don't even get a chance to get sick and die. You suddenly drop dead. And how do we know that will happen to a person? Because we see somebody else in Tanakh was using something of holiness and was killed suddenly. The Gemara says like this: So Ma Belshazzar. Belshazzar was the king of the Babylonians. He was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, and he had a war against the Persians, and he won. And so he celebrated the war by using the spoils and the kalim of the first Beis Hamikdash that his grandfather destroyed. So he was drinking and having a good time with the first kalim of the first Beis Hamikdash. Shnishtamesh b'klei kodesh, he was using the klei kodesh. Shenasu klei chol. And by using them, we know once you start using kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, let's say a cup belonging to the Beis Hamikdash, as soon as you use it for a personal benefit, it's not a holy cup anymore. It automatically becomes a klei chol. Shenama ubo bo pritzim v'chililo. Pritzim came and defiled it, took the kedusha away from the vessels of the first base of the Beis Hamikdash. And Kiban Shaparsim, since he used it for his own benefit and breached what it's meant to be used for, Nasuchol, the kedusha left the vessel. So therefore, what happened to Belshazzar? He was having a great time with the vessels that his grandfather pillaged from the Beis Hamikdash, and he was using it, drinking. And what happened? Suddenly, Nekam in Oilam, he died suddenly. That night, he saw the writing on the wall, and there was a war, and he was assassinated. So Belshazzar got killed suddenly. So that's what you see in Tanakh. So so therefore, he was basically, when he was playing around with the vessels, it wasn't a holy vessel anymore. If you use the crown of Torah, which lasts forever, you can't get rid of the crown of Torah. Somebody is a scholar at a Yerushalayim, that's a crown that you wear at all times. It doesn't become defiled. and you use it for your own personal benefit, you're still considered a Talmud Chacham. So, but the problem is, Alachas kama v'kama, certainly you'll be removed and die young from the world. So, but there are certain crowns that a person could wear that you could defile. For example, a Kohen can really defile himself and lose the holiness of his kahuna. He become chalal, right? He can marry the wrong person. But if you're wearing the crown of Torah, even if you're a mamzer, or, you're born a mamzer and you can't marry into the Jewish family, still you can still be considered a great person. Mamzer Talmud Chacham is kohen gadol amaret. So, and therefore, but if a person uses it for his own personal benefit, I can imagine this can play out if a person says, "Oh, I'm the great gadol, so give my child a job," even though he's not worthy for that job. Make him the Rosh Yeshiva, or something like that, even though he's not worthy. So you're using nepotism because you're the great person. So then, unfortunately, it's not a good happy ending over there. I want to point out, and this is Alan. I wanted to point this out to you, that one of the questions they ask on the Moaz Tzur, you say, first of all, the Yevonim were metama all the oils. Now the Yevonim, how were the Yevonim metama all the oils? We know that in the base of that the tumas mashkin, liquid cannot be metabel tuma minatorah. It's only drabonim. And all these drabanans did not apply in the Beis HaMikdash. Ein shvus b'mikdash. So how were they metama the oils in the Beis HaMikdash when the whole tuma of metama oil is only drabanan, and there's no tuma, mashkin drabanan in the Beis HaMikdash because ein shavos b'mikdash. All drabanans are suspended in the Beis HaMikdash. So that's why you say ufartzu chaimas migdalai. They breached all the walls of the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, the Yevonim actually took away the kedusha of the Beis HaMikdash. Once that place lost its holiness of temporarily of kedusha's Beis HaMikdash, then v'timu kol hashmanim. Fartzu chaimas migdalai. Then that's how they were mitama kol hashmanim. Anyway, back to the story over here. The Rab Tarfon, the Gemara continues. Kiven dechi achal dehukbalu roiv hamatzayis haba. Since Rab Tarfon was eating at a time when he was permitted to eat, amai tsa'ara ahu gavra. Why did this person bother him? In other words, let's assume that the owner was a Jew, and everybody knew the halacha that once the processing of figs are over, and everybody is packing up their equipment, so then of course everybody is allowed to take the figs. So what was the guy thinking that Rab Tarfon was doing something wrong? Answers the Gemara, because this guy had a theft problem. Okay, they did bail reform in his time, so everybody was vandalizing. He had a crook that would steal all his grapes the entire year. The kaven the ashkel Rab Tarfon. Since he saw Rab Tarfon now, sover, he thought hainu de ganvan, that now that he's the crook, So he found this crook. So the Gemara says, if this is the case, if the guy stole, if the guy thought Rab Tarfon was the ganaf that stole his items the entire year, so Rab Tarfon did not have, the Gemara now is learning that Rab Tarfon should not have to pay and try this another way out and say, hey, I'll pay you for all the figs that I stole the entire year, just let me go, because Rab Tarfon was not obligated to pay. He was not the crook. So, and that's a large amount of money you're asking somebody to pay. So Rab Tarfon did a good thing by saying, hey, I'm Rabbi Tarfon, I'm the great rabbi. So therefore, he had a right to say that. Amai tzir nafshe. Why did Rabbi Tarfon have to be stressed about it? You're asking him to pay $100,000 or just to say, I am Rabbi Tarfon. So he should rather say, I am Rabbi Tarfon and be done with it, not because he had two ways the guy was going to let him go. Either the guy would have let him go by paying the money that he presumably was accused of stealing, or saying I'm Rabbi Tarfon. But since the guy thought he stole all year, so this is a big hefty price for Rabbi Tarfon to pay. So that's why Rabbi Tarfon chose. That's why Rabbi Tarfon chose to say I am Rabbi Tarfon. He didn't do anything wrong. Answers the Gemara. Still, It depends. Mishum de Rabbi Tarfon Osher Godel Hava. He was not just wealthy, he was fabulously wealthy, Rabbi Tarfon. So therefore, he could have easily, this $100,000 or whatever he was accused of stealing, he could have easily slipped away and bought his way out of the problem. And since he did not, and he used that he's Rabbi Tarfon, that's why he should feel stressed about it, because that's not the appropriate use of the crown of Torah. Tanya, we learned to the Bryce. This Bryce is talking about how is a person supposed to learn? How do you approach learning? How do you approach Daf Yomi? So, to Tanya, we learned that it's not about learning. It's about having a strategy to learn. So, Tanya, what's your thought process? La'avas Hashem Elokech. You're supposed to love God, to hear His voice, and cling to Him. So, when you hear God's voice, is when you're learning Torah, it's almost as if God's talking to you, like the Gemara is talking to us. And then you connect to the Torah. So what does that teach you? So the Brisa says, Lo yoyma adam, a man should not say, Ekra, I will read the Chumash, Shikra'uni chacham. They're going to call me a chacham, they're going to honor me. So that's why I'm going to learn how to learn all of Chumash. Eshna, I want to learn all of Mishnayos. I want to be somewhat a deeper learner, like a Kol Yungaman. Shikra'uni Rabbi, they should call me Rebbe, and I'm required, they should be supporting me. Ashanain, I'm going to really teach other people. I should be an old person. The A should be Shiva and sit at the head of the yeshiva, the academy, and I'll be advising and having a positive influence on people. So you're learning, but you're learning not for the sake of hearing God's voice. You're learning for an ulterior motive. Ella, you rather lamad ma'ahava. You have to learn out of love. That means you have to learn la'avas Hashem, to learn that this is the God is talking to you, and you feel a love of God to you and you to God, and therefore you want to hear more about what God has to say to you, and you want to follow through. And the soif hakaver lovay, and the end you will get honor. In other words, not the fake honor that people honor you, but you'll get the most self-respect, self-esteem comes from learning Torah. Because when you feel your higher self, right? When you feel your higher self, you feel a connection to the Creator, the Infinite, and therefore, if you're that connected, you'll automatically, that's the ultimate honor that you get from learning Torah. Shenema, the pasuk says, how to remember Torah. There are two ways to remember Torah. First of all, you make simonim. You make mnemonics, how to remember Torah, and also you get emotionally involved in your learning. The pasuk says, "Koshreim al etzbeisecha," tie the Torah on your fingers. Kosveim, write them al luach libecha, on your emotional tablet, in your emotional heart. In other words, if you're emotional about something, you don't need to write simonim. It's like you always remember the emotional days of your life. When something happened and it was an emotional day, you'll never forget that. Or to harder things that you're not so emotional, at least you write them, make a simon for yourself on your fingers. And what's going to happen? The ways of God are pleasant. The pasuk says, that the Torah is a tree of life. Those that hold on to it, you feel more alive when you learn Torah. Those that support it, are fortunate, because you're fortunate because you feel a higher self, your higher self when you learn that way. Again, Rabbi Elazar bar Tzadok says, "Asay devar m'shem pa'olam." Believe when you're learning Torah, you have to believe that you're doing these things because this is your job, and this is the master of the world commanded you and gave you these instructions. V'daber bohem lishmam, connect to them and speak to them about them lishmam, for its own sake, not for an ulterior motive. You just don't want to learn for karma. A lot of people, they give tzedakah and they do mitzvahs. I'm good, God, now you owe me one. No, lishmam, we're doing it because this is the command. I have no thought or looking for some reciprocation. Al tasim ator lizgadol behem. Don't use the Torah as a crown that you're going to become great because of it. It's unbelievable. You can't use the Torah as a hoe so that you're going to hoe with it. In other words, according to the way the Gemara seems to imply, is that you're not supposed to make a living out of Torah. And the way it was in previous generations, the great Rabbanim had other jobs, other sources of income. Either they were a doctor or they ran businesses. Rab Tarfon had companies. Rashi was a winemaker. The Bali Tosfos were bankers. Of course, every generation is different, but at least in theory, it's always best for a rabbi to have another source of income. The Kal V'Chomer, we have a Kal V'Chomer. Mal Bal Shetzer Nishtamash El B'Kli Kodesh Nasa Kli Choel Nekam and Oilam Bal Shetzer, who used the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash, and it wasn't really vessels of the Beis Hamikdash because it was non-sacred vessels. He got destroyed from the world. He left the word suddenly. Hamishtamis B'Kisri Torah, someone who's using the crown of Torah to personally benefit and have his own personal gains, al-achas kama, suddenly he will be nifter from the world. Very harsh statement. Amar Rava said, if he's in a place, if a great rabbi is in a place, they don't know who he is, he's allowed to introduce himself that I am a Talmud Chacham so that they could give him the respect that he's due. Because if they're going to mistreat him, they're going to be liable because they're mistreating a great rabbi. So in that scenario, then it's permitted to say who you are. Because you find in Tanakh, Avadia introduced himself to Eliyahu and said, Yarei Hashem minu urav. I always feared God from my younger years. So you see, Avadia, who was a Navi, who was unknown to Eliyahu, had to introduce himself and tell himself, and this is not showing off. He's just telling Eliyahu, you have to show me respect because this is who I am, and you not be aware of that. So the Gemara says, same question again. El-Kashid Rab Tarfon, what's wrong with Rab Tarfon introducing himself to that person that's kidnapping and about to kill him, that he's the great Rabbi Tarfon? Answers the Gemara, Rab Tarfon did wrong because the Asher Gadol Haya, he was fabulously wealthy. He should have appeased the person by paying, by giving him money. If there's another way out of it, yes. But here, sometimes it's permitted to introduce yourself as the great Talmud Chacham. Rami asked a contradiction. Since it says in Pasuk, V'avdatu Yarei Hashem minu urav, we see that Evadia introduced himself as a Yarei Shemayim to Eliyahu Hanavi. So you're supposed to say who you are. Uksiv, and the Pasuk says, Ya'alel Chazar v'loy picha, that other people should praise you, but you're not your own mouth. You shouldn't say anything about you. You should be humble. Don't say anything about your achievements of who you are. So what is it? Answers the Gemara, if the people know about you and they're not respecting you, don't keep telling them who you are. Because if they're not respecting you, it must be there's something that you need to fix. And if you were 100% perfect, they would indeed respect you. But if they don't know who you are, then you're allowed to introduce yourself. I'm the great rabbi. I wrote this in this sefer, and therefore you could command such respect. Amar Rava said, "Shari leilu tzruve merabanan lemeimar tzuruve merabana ana." A young rabbi is allowed to say, "I am the young rabbi, and treat me with respect." Shari li tigra bereisha, have my court case first because it's bittul Torah, so he can demand that kind of respect. The ksiv, because basically you're not respecting him, but you're respecting the Torah that's with him. The ksiv ubnei David kahanim hoya. It says in the pasuk that the children of David, who came from Shevet Yehuda, were kahanim. What is that? Were they kahanim? So no, because they were talmidei chachamim, they're like kahanim. Ma kohen noitel b'rosh, just like a kohen is the first to take. Af talmid chacham noitel b'rosh. So a talmid chacham is also the first to take. So he take the kohen goes up there first. The kohen and nolan. Why do you know that a kohen is supposed to be the first of everything? The ksiv, it says in the pasuk, you have to give holiness to the kohen. What does that mean? Rabbi Shmuel explained, for a kohen, you have to make him holy. Anything that involves holiness, the kohen goes first. We go to Amid Beis. Liftoyach Rishon. The kohen is the one called up first to the Sefer Torah. That's what Liftoyach Rishon means. And all the Rush explains on the side, it means that he should be the first speaker. If there's a bunch of people speaking, the kohen's supposed to speak first. Ulevarech Rishon, and he's supposed to. Rashi says he's supposed to make the hamotzi. If people are making the hamotzi, he makes the hamotzi first. Ubeberchas hamazon, obviously, you give him the honor to lead the benching. Velito mana yafarishay, and when he's dividing, or maybe when you're dividing, if you're dividing something with a Jewish guy, let's say you have a coin friend and you're splitting a cheese Danish. So even if they're equal, he picks which side he wants. So it's inyanim that you have to give a respect to a coin. There's a whole halacha and shulchan aruch. It's not simple. Seems to be somewhat of a daraisa. Again, we're talking about a Talmud Chacham introducing himself as a Talmud Chacham. Abba Rava said, "Shari leilut survei mirabbanan l'meimar." A rabbi is allowed to say, "Lo yahavina karga." I'm exempt from taxes because I'm a Talmud Chacham. The Ksiv, it says in the pasuk, "Minda b'loy b'halach lo shalit l'mirma aleim." When Ezra was establishing the taxes, he said, for these great Jews that were in the time of the building of the Second Commonwealth, they don't exempt from minda b'loy halach, different types of taxes. Rabbi Yehuda, what's the difference between these types of taxes? Minda zu b'nas hamelach. Minda is like property taxes. B'loy zu kesef gugolase. B'loy is income taxes. V'halach zu arnoina. These are special taxes to pay for the police force of the king and the food of the king. So there, the pasuk says that these Talmidei Chachamim that came up with Ezra, some people were exempt from these taxes. So when the Jews are in control of the government and they're coming around collecting for the taxes, a rabbi doesn't have to be shy. If the tax collector doesn't know who he is, he doesn't have to be shy. He can tell him, I'm a great Talmud Chacham. I'm part of the clergy and I'm exempt from these taxes. Now, what happens if you're in a situation where the taxes are run by unscrupulous kingdoms? So for Amar Rava said, Shari leilut survei mirabbanan, a great rabbi is allowed to say, L'meimar avda denura ana lo yavina karga. I'm a member of the fire clergy, and therefore I don't have to pay taxes. In other words, the Persian government, they worshipped fire when the Persians were in control, and their priests were called fire clergy. So rabbi could say to that in order to avoid taxes, he could say, I'm a clergy person of the fire. Everybody could say that because they would take like 80% of your money in taxes if you were honest. So you have to try to wiggle your way around it. Even a rabbi can introduce himself as a tzurver merabbanan. He can say, I work for the Avodah Zarah. My timer, what's the reason? Lavruchi arya minei kamar. You're allowed to chase away a lion from you, and to protect the assets, the meager assets of a Talmud Chacham. Yes, he's permitted to even introduce himself that he works for the Avodah Zarah. And fascinating. Then the Gemara concludes with one other story about the fire. Again, you have to know the Persian times where they worshipped fire. In fact, there was holidays where you could not leave a fire on in your house. But the Gemara says, Rav Ashi in Iraq, Havele Ahu Abba, he had this forest that he owned, and he sold it. Zabnu Lebnei Nura. He sold it to a place where it's likely they're going to chop down some of the trees to use it as an offering for the fire offerings for their Avodah Zarah. So he actually sold it to like an Avodah Zarah clinic. Amalei Ravina Ravashis, Ravina Sir Ravashi, how were you allowed to make this sale? You're even for a guy, you're not allowed to encourage him to do Avodah Zarah. And now you're making it easier for them to serve Avodah Zarah by selling them this forest, because now they can chop down trees and offer fire up to their Avodah Zarah. Amalei, so Ravashi answered, most of the wood will be used for firewood. It's cold, and therefore it was not 100% going to be used for Avodah Zarah. So therefore, I'm not in violation of this problem of abetting of the service of Avodah Zarah. New Mishnah. Again, a man says ad habotzir, I ad hakotzir, until the harvesting, I make a neder, I'm not drinking wine. So what does that mean? He means I'm not going to drink wine until the people start to harvest wheat. Even though he didn't say wheat, he said harvesting. Harvesting plain is usually wheat harvest. but he's not harvesting barley because barley was used for animal food. But again, in some places they eat, the men will eat barley. Let's say in Japan, they won't eat wheat, they'll eat rice. So hakol if makom nidreit. It depends where your neder is made. What the ananas when harvest in the United States, maybe wheat harvest. In China and in the Asian countries, it means the rice harvest. So it depends where you make the neder. That's how we'll define what you meant till the harvest season. Now, in time, let's say you said till they harvest, but it depends where you live. In the valley, they harvest earlier. In the mountain, it happens to be later. Imhoya Bahar, if you made the neder while you were on a mountain, until the harvest season on the higher mountains, let's say you're in Denver, so then Bahar, you got to go when the harvest begins at that mountain time. Imhoya Babika, if you're in a valley where the harvesting season begins earlier, Babika, what will determine the time that you start, that the neder ends, that is up until when the harvesting begins in the valley. Ad HaGeshamim, if you say, I make a neder, you live in Israel, until the rainy season. Until the rainy season has passed. So that means until, it doesn't mean until the passing of the rainy season, but it means until the second rain started to come. There are three rains that happen in Israel, three like unique type of rains that happen all at once during the month of Cheshvan. So when you say ad shehei gesham until the rains have occurred, or till the beginning, you mean your neder will take effect up until it actually started to rain during the second reviah, during the second rain season. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says ad shegia zamana shalriah, until it reaches the actual day where it's expected to have that second rain, but it didn't happen yet. Because, that is undeterminable. And really, you meant, since it's undetermined, it's not a set hour, a set time when it's actually going to rain. It happens around a certain date. So when that date occurs, even if it didn't rain yet, that's when your neder stops. Let's say a man said, until the rain season has finished. So when is the rain season over in Israel? So according to Rab Meir, is actually Nisan Kule de Rab Meir. Rab Meir says sometimes it rains even at the end of Nisan, after Pesach. So until the end of Nisan, until basically Iyar time, that's the end of the rainy season. Rabbi Yehuda says no, Yavar HaPesach, until after Pesach. So the end of Pesach, that's the end of the season of rain. It's not going to rain after Pesach, and if it does, it's just an anomaly. But that's not what you meant in your neder. One more point. Tanya, we learned to the Brisa. Anoide min hakayitz bagalil. Let's say you made a neder. I'm not going to drink wine ad hakayitz until the processing of figs. Bagalil. And you made the neder while you were in the mountains. Well, the processing of the mountains, of the figs in the mountainous region of Israel happens later than the processing of figs in the valleys, right? In the south of Israel. So, but when you made the neder, you were in the north of Israel. The Yard La Makam, and you went to the valleys of Israel, where the processing of figs begins at an earlier time. Afa Pisha Gia Hakayas Ba Makam, even though now it started the processing of figs in the valleys, your neder is still in effect. Also, Achegia Hakayetz Begalil, you're still also to violate your neder until they actually begin the processing in the north, because we go at the time where you made the neder, where you made the neder, and you were in the north, and that's why your neder will have a little bit longer time frame. Okay, well, Hashem will stop here.